So you have your precious Rhino model. So for now, I am just going to import this whole thing. I have some weird Make 2D stuff going on, but just to sort of talk about something we haven't talked about and we will talk about in the future. Right now I have two layers going on. One is called wood, which is theoretically wood. The other is default. This will be relative in the future, but I didn't have you guys work with layers yet. I'm sure some of you did if you already know Rhino. So we will just talk about that as we work on it in 3ds Max. So let's just open up 3ds Max quickly, and I'm not sure if I have 2016. Is there a 2017 yet? Psh, well, they're similar. Okay, so this is beautiful 3ds Max. It's still loading. The first thing, there's this crazy thing called the startup template. For our uses, we're just going to go with like the original setup, but if you are like industrial or object oriented in your sort of creation, the sample studio is super useful because it has this beautiful light situation happening that often when I would Rhino with Maxwell or V-Ray, which are plugins to Rhino for renderings, I would build this setup myself with lights and a white background and a box, and you kind of like photograph it that way so it gets nice soft lighting. But there's also this sample architecture thing. I've never used it. Underwater, certainly haven't had the use for that yet, but as you like. I think my friend used it in college. It's pretty epic. So this is a completely different modeling interface. If you, for whatever reason, feel really compelled and drawn to 3ds Max, feel free to go to lynda.com, which you all as Iowa State students and have access to endless tutorials. It is completely different. Everything, there's basically no typing, and everything is NURB based, whereas the others we use polygons frequently. So they're all based on tabs over here, and then some tabs over here, because mine might look different because I've already set it up how I like it, and there are tabs up here that usually have crap tons of buttons. So there are different, it's just very different from Rhino. You will always be looking for like buttons and things like that, and there's like lots of procedures. For example, what we always start with is the teapot, which is a very popular thing, and there you go. You draw a teapot. And so you could do that with a sphere or a box or a cylinder. You click over here. You have different kind of primitives to work with. You have different kinds of lights. You have different camera options. You have different types of helpers, which is actually script based. The helpers can do sort of like what I call the minions. So when you want minions to walk, like you have like 300 minions here, and you want them all to crowdsource and walk out that door, that's what a helper can do for you. And some other sort of techniques. So this, and then you have another folder set and another and another and another. So this is a really complicated for me for like sort of intro modeling, but what I use Max for all the time is rendering, because those who have rendering experience know how long it can take. You like go to bed and hope that your computer survives the night. And this was a while ago, like in 2000, maybe 11, I rendered a high definition 24 by 36 or 18 by 24 poster in 45 minutes of like night with like night lights and everything. So this render engine, which is called Mental Ray, is so much faster. Because it's so much faster, that's why you do all your animations here. Because for those of you that do renderings with Maxwell and V-Ray that are architecture students, you can only imagine how long it would take to do a 1,000 frame video forever. So Rhino's not set up to handle any sort of animation. So things that you would use this for are fly-throughs. If you want to like fly through, if you want to circle around your pavilion, which is what we'll do today. There are pretty countless. It's very simple, and it's simple techniques that you just build on. So we're going to import it. We're going to modify materials, and then we're going to set some cameras to output a TIFF sequence in an hour. It's really that easy. And then you'll be making animations. I actually have been teaching this for like 1 hour in my studio classes, and everyone gets it immediately. Some of them don't get to doing the assignment, but they understand it. So, file. I selected the whole thing, so there's a crap ton of little objects here. So I actually went in and made like individual like planks of wood and things like that. So there's many objects, but I'm just going to grab them all and type file, export selected. Put it in a yes. You double click. It's right here on this window. Oh. W. Alt W. Oops, sorry. Alt W. So you Alt W, you click on where you want to go, and you can Alt W right back. There are a handful of type commands that are useful, but as I stopped using this for modeling, I don't really remember what they all are outside of Alt W. So Alt W. So grab the whole thing, export selected. I usually go to the file, export selected. We'll put in Arc 436. Yeah. Okay, so I exported it. Oops, I put the wrong thing. Export selected. Let's get to there. You want to change the file type to an OBJ. So again, you can import, export everything in the world. It's kind of overwhelming, but OBJ works well. You can even export, I think, to a 3ds, which is its... Let's see, do they have that there? Yeah, they have 3D Studio. So let's just do a 3ds. Okay. So now we go into Max. I'm going to just delete this teapot so that... Oh. So Mac users, you might have to have function delete to delete things, because I think this one specifically, our delete button on Mac is technically backspace to PCs to function delete if you can't delete anything. import non-native file formats into 3ds Max. Desktop. Open Book Nook 3ds. Open. So it's saying, oh, I have this weird type of small thing happening, but merge objects with current scene, or completely replace the current scene, and convert units. So for visualization purposes, it does not totally matter the units. I often, when I'm just using this for visuals, don't even care what the units are. Theoretically, I think this could affect some textures, but I still have yet to have a problem. So typically I say I merge the objects with the current scene, because usually I have nothing in it. If you have crap like teapots all over it, you could completely erase it and put it in there. And then I just leave the convert units always checked. And then, do you want to set the current animation length to match? Well, we didn't have an animation length, so it doesn't really matter. I always just say yes. So there's the thing. As you can see, it is very kindly telling me about all my objects. So I click on object 000083, and apparently it's that. Super not useful. Why? Because it all came in together, so I have to go through and sort of like figure out where things end so that I can change a material. So if you have a lot of objects, it might be best to export them as a group materially. We will go over that later, maybe not today, but just so you know, this 7,000 object list is not necessarily ideal. Okay, 134, but still, it's annoying. So the first thing you're going to do is let's try and play with materials and talk about rendering. Does everyone know what rendering is? Anyone not really get it when I say what a rendering is? So rendering is done with these teapots. That's why teapots are like a really big thing in softwares invented in the you can come in, boys. It's okay. Teapots became like this very iconic thing that seemed to be the best object to test material renderings on. So if you were developing a texture, you would evaluate that quality of that material with a teapot. It has certain like kinks and roundness and a certain amount of details where that's why it became a popular object. That's why it's in Maya, that's why it's in Max and a lot of sort of older Autodesk softwares as objects for testing. So again, teapot is where your render setup, your render frame, your render production, all these things happen. So if you click render frame window, which is just a teapot, that's where all the renderings will happen. And if you click render production, a precious teapot will pop up, or a precious rendering will pop up. I was zoomed in. So everyone, just make sure that you understand that these teapots have different jobs. I've never used rendered in Autodesk 360. It's kind of brilliant, and if you use this for architecture, you should. You are then technically rendering in a cloud, which can help you guys a lot, but for my uses, I've never needed that. So, just an FYI. So, while this is all great, you know, it's not really materially what I'm interested in. There's for sure at least steel and wood. And if I could at least have those things, then I would probably, be kind of satisfied with where it is. And this is basically all I expect of you. And for those of you that don't have your laptops, I wish you the best luck. But in order to pull up your materials palette, you type M, and the window pops up. So you might be in this thing called Slate Material Editor. And some people love this. This did not exist when I learned how to, when I started using this, and I think it's confusing. Other people do not. That was one of the first comments I got when I switched over to this one. William, which one do you use? Do you use the Slate or do you use this? You use both. So I love compact. I think it makes sense. It's very visually accessible. The one thing that is complicated, though, that you might not have is Mental Ray. So does anyone who has Mental or 3ds Max up right now? Does it say when you click on choose a template? Wait, which one? Modes. I'll show you. So basically, what you might be, the mode you might be in, is something like, what does this say right here? Do you see this button? Standard. Click on the button. Do you have a thing called Mental Ray, and then underneath that, Arc and Design? Right there. No. Okay. So this happens all the time. Even if you're using a computer upstairs, once you establish this on your personal computer, it will always stay like this. But if you do not tell your computer, your render setup straight away that you are interested in using Mental Ray, it won't even load. So the first thing you have to do is go, I love it, all the way down. Wait, nope, not here. Render. All the way down to, oh, right here, never mind. I guess it's here now. So if you click on Render Setup and NVIDIA Mental Ray, so Render Setup, Mental Ray. You're my test subject that works out. Okay, now go back into your materials. Oops, wrong one. And click on the button again. But did you click on the button and it has no Mental Ray underneath here? So once you click this to be Mental Ray, you will be able to click on Arc and Design. So Arc and Design is my favorite set as a template, because when you change these, if you go to standard or just architectural, you have these are just kind of generic. They're generic materials. Yes, I could use them, but they are not specifically designed for Mental Ray, which is the most important part. Once you've activated your Mental Ray and you go to Arc and Design, their templates are much more specific. You have varnished wood, glossy varnished wood, rough concrete, polished concrete. So your options are much greater and they're much more specific, and they are actually tuned for Mental Ray. So let's start with, the first thing I want to do is actually just change the steel sides, because that's really easy to do. I'm going to go down to metal, pretty standard, brushed metal, let's say. So did you see what happened there? I changed this block. Okay, I changed the color accidentally too. But I changed this material. You can develop countless materials. So you click on the next one. Let's click on this one. Right now it's Autodesk Ceramic. I don't want Autodesk Ceramic. I want Arc and Design. And again, I'm just going to put it back to brushed metal because I feel like I messed it up. Brushed metal. Now, the next thing I know I'm going to need is wood. So I click on the next material, Autodesk Wall Paint. Beautiful. Go back to Arc and Design. Again, just because I like that stuff. And let's go up to wood. Satin, varnished wood, why not? So these are the two materials I'm going to use. I've already set them up, so it should be theoretically easier for me to access them. Now all I need to do next, I have a material set up, is assign the material to the thing. And it's very easy. You grab the things. So keeping in mind this is a completely different structure. If you were very well organized over here, you could click on the objects too and they would all be grabbed as well. But instead I'm just going to grab one, hold control, and then grab the other. I want those two parts to be in this metal, brushed metal. And all I do is click on the third button over. Seems to be a box that's pointing to another green box, and you just says assign material to selection. Boom. So that's done. But you can't see that it's done because just like Rhino, we are in a view. Yes. Yes. That might be more advanced than today though. So shaded, realistic, consistent colors, edge faces, I don't know. Realistic though is what you want to start seeing shadows. You click on this top corner right here. Oh, really? Okay. This might be a 2016 difference. Is it in your list? It is? Did you change your render engine yet? But it's in yours, and do you have... Okay, then it's just a 2017 thing. Then never mind. But let's just do another way, because there's always a million ways to do things. This actually crashes your computer, so they've probably recalled it something, and I'll check on that afterwards. But you can also very quickly just click Render Production and see if stainless steel has stuck. So that is stainless steel, and the rest is still just white. It's not very obvious, but whatever. We'll get there. Oops, Alt W. Uh-oh, I've accidentally hit something. I'm going to, in the quickest way possible, assign the material to all the wood. So similar to Rhino, you can lock things. This is probably the most useful thing if you have somehow imported a crap ton of things. is you start to freeze your selections. So now it's frozen, and I can very easily select all the wood. I don't know what, that's probably even just some curves, but whatever. Wood, assigned, Alt W, Alt W, back to perspective, Alt W, cancel, and now you're starting to get this again. Let me go look at what this realistic thing must be called now. So I think most of you guys have figured out how to pan, but are struggling with orbit. Maybe, maybe not. But Alt and then middle button clicks down, rotates around your object. Alt and middle button click down rotates around a centered object. Middle button clicked just drags it to and fro. So you can zoom way, way in and then hit render. Oops, don't render to the cloud, go away. Oh. Like what? Oh no, it's not like Maxwell. I've never done it, so maybe. If you know how to, then awesome. You can teach the next class. Production render mode. There we go. So, voila. I have something like wood and something like stainless steel. Wonderful. So the next thing we're going to do is set up an animation. So we've already, it's, you know, class has hardly begun, and we already know how to import things and assign them materials and make them beautiful and rotate around objects and go from 4 windows to 1 window. So easy. So the next thing we're going to do is cameras. I'm actually just going to move this up. Again, you don't need a lot of modeling skills in Max, because I'm not going to teach you how to model in Max, but for what it's worth, this has a default, that gimbal. I actually had an interview, this is a caveat, had an interview for my job at VCU Qatar, which was designer of information visualization and 3D modeling, and one of the interviewees was feeling sassy, and he had just started to teach himself SketchUp, and he said, I have one question. What is a gimbal? And I said, I have no idea this word you are using. So apparently this is gimbal, and in some softwares they actually call them gumballs now. I've never called them anything, and so I have no word for them. In Max, this automatically pops up. And so you can select all your stuff and move it around. If for whatever reason you're having trouble moving, it's right here. And as Kaylin has realized, sometimes because I froze that. Whoops. Control Z. Control Z. Unfreeze all. You can move things straight up. You can also very easily scale things. These are pretty much the limits of what I use this for, a uniform scale. But if you ever, like, your arrow has turned into something else, like, I have no idea how to describe what was going on. You might be or you're doing stuff and you don't really know what's happening. You can just go back to this sort of select an object, which is your basic default select key. It's like Photoshop when you punch V to get back to the select tool. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is camera setup, which is fantastically fun. Let's just do a couple more things. I really hate this black background that's been happening with each of the renderings, and that's completely fixable under rendering and environment. So the only 2 places you'll really need to go is rendering environment. I think we clearly all understand what that means. But specifically, I totally hate this black environment. So you can the first thing under the environment tab is change the color to like seafoam green. Okay. Environment under rendering. It's actually number 8. So if you punch 8, it pops up. So now when I render, seafoam green, yeah. You can also change the color of the light, blah, blah. Something else you might want to do is just have a ground plane. Again, this is not about learning how to model in Max, but we do have these very basic primitives that exist on this panel over here. And one of the things I usually do is a plane. Just so that I always do things that engage gravity, so that said thing can rest on the ground. So plane, and it just sort of like pops up. It's going to always be on 0, 0. So if this wasn't here, I could move it up or down, but here's a plane. It's casting shadows. You can assign it a material, so I'll probably assign this one just the generic white. And then we render that one more time. Oh, all my dreams are coming true. That is beautiful. I love it. So there's lots of other things that we can do, which is like suns and moons and lights, but we'll leave it at this for now because our real goal is to start to develop cameras and export TIFF sequences so we can take things into Rhino. Oops. Okay. So next on the list is cameras. So under create, we have cameras, and there are basically 3 kinds of cameras. I almost always use target cameras, but you can use whatever you like. So target camera, I think the first button, I forget this every time. Yeah, Control Z. So the first click you're going to do is the camera, and then you're trying to, and then the second click, so I clicked and I'm dragging with the button down to establish what the target is. Alright, so that's my camera. The good thing about this insane object list now is I can very easily find my camera 011, which is right here, and then my camera 011 target, which is this. And I can independently move these things. For example, I need camera target 1 to move out of this plane. And that is easily achievable by just clicking on it here and using this modifier to move it up and down. And then once I'm done moving it, I click back off on the object. So this is all great, except I have really no idea what camera 1 is seeing right now. So I'm going back to Alt W, and in, let's say, this front view, which I don't think I need anymore. Oh, look, it's starting to become apparent. I'm just gonna modify this. So I'm gonna go to, gonna lock this plane for 1 because it'll get annoying for each selection. I'm gonna go to this target and I'm gonna move it up closer to my actual object. Great. And so now I'm going to take this one and right click on left, and at the very top you'll see cameras. So the cameras are actually going to show you what the camera is looking at. So click on camera 011. This is camera 011's view. It's really not that great, but we will work on it. Yeah, that's why it's not so great. So doing these things in so there we go. Super beautiful. So the next thing that we need to, we have a camera. It's pointing at a thing. We've confirmed that the camera is pointing at the thing that we want it to do. Now all that is left is for us to animate that camera and export it as a TIFF sequence. So the first thing about animation is, oh no. Hold on one sec. Yeah, okay. So the first thing about animations is you have to do a little bit of math. How many frames per second is a typical movie? Anyone? How many frames are in 1 second of video? Can be 60. Yeah. So you can do 30, you can do 60, you can do 24. Shockingly, what we're going to do, which is After Effects, you can modify that there. I almost always do 26 because that's the default for, I think, After Effects import. Or I think 30 is. Either way, let's say it's 30. That means it's going to be like a lightweight video-ish. 30. How many frames do you need for a 10-second video then? Yes, 300. So this is the little math you have to do when you start to set up your animation. So in Max, when we clicked on it, I think it had like 100 frames down here, and then it synced with the Rhino, which was default 30, because I guess it's 1 second long. So we definitely have to have more frames than this. Right now it's set 0 to 30. We need 300. If you click on this time configuration box, it's like the time configuration setup. And all this wonderfulness comes up that I never touch any of it. And except for this part, which is the frames per second. Oops, not that. Oh, the end time. So frames per second is 30. And the end time, I want that to be 300 now. And you click OK. And this all of a sudden becomes 300 seconds. Which you can now drag, which means nothing to you right now. But you can drag along and go to certain parts of time. So this is the basis for your 10-second video. So now all we have to do is make our video. We have to animate it. So when you animate things with any of these softwares, you use keys. So you are keyframing step by step the way that you want things to move. This applies to cameras, this applies to objects, but we're only going to do cameras for now. So often you will accidentally key things and it will go to crap. But just know that it's practice. Like, I am very good at keyframing After Effects, for example, and my one of the students, Erin, she just was like, I get so confused, and it's really confusing sometimes. So don't lose the faith. Stick to simplicity. But anyways, so I'm gonna just demonstrate this. This is camera 1 down here. I want the first 2 seconds of my my video to be a zoom in from here to the pavilion. That's what I want the first 2 seconds to be. So I'm going to come down here, click on my camera and my target, why not, and set keys. Then I am going to move this about 2 seconds, so let's go to 60. And I'm going to grab my camera and move it way in, and then set the key. So now if I go back, it will only animate in one window, by the way. Hold on. Whoops. 1 sec. Did I accidentally delete them? Control D. Okay, so let's go. Nice. Keyed. Weird. I'm doing something way off. Auto. Oh. Okay, so now you can see in the plan view that the camera is moving around. So here, it pulls back, it moves down, it moves up. I don't know why I was having trouble with my key, but the even easier way, which was what I was going to show you next, is to just turn on auto and do everything you need to do. So again, you can see in this window, this is the only one that's animating. So pause. This button goes back to start. This reverses. This is play. Next frame. Go to the end. Let's go all the way back. And this is the video that it would output. It's like it's falling off. It's beautiful. So nice. It's exactly what I wanted it to do. So I will just show you how to do that again. You, under perspective or anyone that you want to change, you right click, or you just click on cameras, camera 1. And being good, you would actually name it something, not camera 001. Okay, so the next, just one more time, I'm going to delete this camera and start over again. So let's do a free camera instead. Camera free, so you can see the difference. We'll just put it here. It is, oops. If you keep clicking, more and more cameras will pop up. You've been warned. So I'm going to just rotate this and make it look at what I think it should be looking at. I'm going to change this perspective to camera 1 again. Fine. This time I'm going to go back down here. So I've deleted the object that was keyed. All the keys are gone. Now when I hit play, nothing will happen. I deleted that camera that had been animated. It's gone, and everything it had to do with it. So sometimes that's a better, you'll see that when you turn on auto, some things can get really squirrely really fast. So sometimes the best option is to delete it and start over again. You can, when you get more comfortable with it, go in here, you can delete these individual keys. But again, people often get really lost that way. So going all the way back to the beginning, I'm going to move this out just a little bit. So using the move tool, looks pretty good. I think my passion for this video will be to sort of do a like movement around the whole pavilion. So I'm going to sort of do that by hand. There's other easier ways to do it, but for what you learned today, that's it. I'll go to about 80. Oh, sorry. Turn on your auto key. Move it towards about 80. And then I'll just grab my precious camera. Camera 1. Let's move it up here. Rotate it. So like, let's just go straight down and see what happens. There, and move it over. Move, not you, sorry. Move. And move it over. And then we'll go down to 160. Move it again. Rotate it. And then we'll go to like 240. And we'll move it again. And we'll rotate it. And we'll go to the end. And we'll attempt to go back to where we were. But it won't be perfect. Turn auto off. And we'll put it in this one and see what happens. Yay, I love it. It's just the best. So clearly you can see there's some finessing that needs to happen with these things. This is also not the best way to rotate around an object, but this is just so you start to get used to animating cameras. You can fly through it, you can zoom in. These are all things you can do. So once you're at this point, and in the last 20 minutes, I'm going to show you how to export a TIFF sequence. So now that you have an animation that is 300 frames long, you need to export it so you can put it in your presentation for school. When you go to render setup, you have like 5 tabs that you can sort of play with. The first thing that you're going to probably want to change is that you are not doing a single. So I think that you can, we're doing a range, and 1 to 300. So if you click on single, you're probably going to get confused that it doesn't have all of them. So you have to make sure you indicate that you are doing a range of 0 to 300. That would capture all of your frames instead of the single. You could even do individual ones. You could even skip them. So you know how GIFs technically are 1 in 5 or 1 in 20 frames. You actually can specify that. This you could do and make it like less too. Another thing that you need to do is change probably this output size. For something like this where it's just a test, I always click on this 320 to 240 button, and you should too. There are these other little buttons here. For final work, it should always be like 900 by 1200. So none of these buttons are sufficient for final work. FYI. The reason you do such high resolution is because you never will go back and change your renderings, ever, never. No one ever has fixed their renderings after their final review ever in the history of time. And so if as faculty we want to like go and publish your work and you have a 600 by 800 photo, we will be like next, because that's a crappy picture. So 320 by 240 is a good place to be. And then we are rendering with quad 4 camera 001 options, and we need to render an output desktop. No. So render output is where your files go. So I'm going to go put it back in this folder, and I'm going to create a new folder that says and you can modify. This is important. This is where you put your type, and we are going for TIFFs, and your file name. it will automatically generate like the 001, 002 on the end of each of your TIFFs. But you just put your name, I don't know, Leslie, TIFF, save. It's going to ask you for some of these things. I say okay. So now we have made sure that we're rendering the camera, which, how depressing if we would render 300 frames of the plan. That doesn't do anything. We are rendering with Mental Ray. We have the view is just being rendered. We've changed the size. We have the range all correct, and we know where it's going and what kind of file it will be. Now we click render and we wait. So right now it seems it's taking about 1 second to 2 seconds per frame. So this will take, you know, a couple minutes. Any questions so far? So easy. So this is on TIFF 14, so we have many more to go. But just to sort of show you what is happening behind the scenes once you do a TIFF sequence. They're all just starting to pile in here. And you can actually generate your animation by clicking through. It's not as impressive right now because there's nothing to see, but voila, this is it. So once this is done, the TIFF sequence is done, you can import that as an MOV into After Effects. So as always, there will be students that think it is super stupid that I am not just exporting this as an MOV. And those students are usually the ones that are in the computer labs during class because they can't turn their project in yet because it is still rendering. There are many reasons you do TIFF sequence instead of MOVs. One, this happens to me all the time. If I export it as an MOV, frame 00221 might get corrupt. In an MOV, you're screwed. Like, you cannot re-render one frame and stick it in that MOV. If the TIFF sequence gets messed up, you won't even be able to tell after you run it through After Effects. And if it's super obvious, you go to frame 0021 and you re-render that frame and you just put it in this file sequence. Same problem happens for people that are like over ambitious. They have like everything's chrome and the sun is setting and it's at like high definition 4K rendering, and they're like, I can't turn it in because it's still rendering. If you did a TIFF sequence and you had to do 300 but now you only have 250, well, that seems like better than not turning in your homework, doesn't it? So in After Effects, I can take those 250 frames, make them 300, and still pass my assignment. So I have never, and then, oh no, I don't have any time to do the actual renderings for the boards, but wait, I have all these renderings right here. So I actually have pictures of my project already, and I can just drop these in too. So I have yet to be proven that exporting as an MOV is superior to TIFF sequence. It's just like a common step. We all the computer people agree. So please don't literally one student, he just had to do it his way. He thought it was so stupid to take it and go and make it an MOV in another software, and he was the one that could not turn in his assignment. So he was sitting in the computer lab rendering. Don't be like that person. Export a TIFF sequence, never MOVs. And that's pretty much it. As you can see, it's still rendering. We're about 1/6 of the way through. So. Any questions other than that? Yes. Okay, I will come over. But again, the assignment's up on the side box. It's also on Blackboard.